My sister laughed in my face when I showed up to her company's charity gala in a thrift store dress, telling everyone I'd never amount to anything in her world of luxury and success. 3 months later, I walked into her office as her boss's new business partner, and the look on her face when she realized I now controlled her career was absolutely priceless. But how did a struggling freelance graphic designer with $847 in her bank account end up owning half of a multi-million-dollar marketing empire? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The Philadelphia rain hammered against the windows of my cramped studio apartment as I stared at the eviction notice taped to my door. 30 days. That's all I had left before I'd be out on the street. I crumpled the paper in my fist and tossed it onto the pile of unpaid bills collecting dust on my second-hand coffee table. My phone buzzed with a text from my older sister, Victoria. Of course it was her. Victoria Walker Brennan, as she insisted everyone call her now, ever since she married into the Brennan family 3 years ago. Adeline, don't forget about the Bennett & Associates charity gala tomorrow night, 7 p.m. sharp. Try to look presentable for once. I read the message twice, my jaw clenching tighter each time. Try to look presentable. As if I had a closet full of designer gowns just waiting for the right occasion. As if I hadn't been eating ramen noodles for dinner 5 nights a week, just to keep my graphic design business afloat. Victoria worked as the senior marketing director at Bennett & Associates, one of the most prestigious marketing firms on the East Coast. She never let me forget it either. Every family gathering became a stage for her to showcase her success while I sat quietly in the corner. The family disappointment who chose to pursue art instead of a real career. The next evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, smoothing down the emerald green dress I'd found at a consignment shop in South Philly. It was pretty, actually. Vintage 1960s style with a cinched waist and flowing skirt. It had cost me $42, money I absolutely couldn't afford to spend, but I refused to give Victoria another reason to look down on me. The Grand Belmont Hotel's ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and perfectly dressed socialites when I arrived. I felt like an imposter the moment I stepped through the doors. Women in Chanel and Dior glided past me while men in custom-tailored tuxedos discussed stock portfolios and summer homes in the Hamptons. I spotted Victoria immediately. She was impossible to miss in her blood-red Valentino gown, her dark hair swept into an elegant updo, a champagne flute balanced perfectly in her manicured hand. She was laughing with a group of colleagues, her head thrown back in that practiced way that said, "Look at me. Look at how successful and carefree I am." I approached slowly, already regretting my decision to come. "Adeline!" Victoria's voice cut through the classical music like a knife. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You actually made it. And you're wearing... Oh, that's adorable. Very retro." Her friends turned to look at me, their eyes scanning my dress with barely concealed amusement. "It's vintage," I said quietly, hating how defensive I sounded. "Of course it is," Victoria said, taking a sip of her champagne. "This is my little sister, everyone. Adeline is a graphic designer. Well, she makes logos for local businesses. It's very quaint." The way she said quaint made it sound like an insult. One of her colleagues, a blonde woman in a black cocktail dress, smiled politely. "That sounds creative. Do you work for an agency?" "I'm freelance," I replied. "She works from home," Victoria interjected, her tone dripping with condescension. "In her apartment in South Philly. It's very bohemian." I felt my face flush. The blonde woman's smile became strained as she excused herself to refresh her drink. The rest of Victoria's group quickly dispersed, leaving just the two of us standing near the bar. "Did you have to do that?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Victoria turned to face me fully, her expression hardening. "Do what, Adeline? Tell the truth? You're 28 years old and you're barely scraping by. Look around you. This is what success looks like. This is the lifestyle you could have had if you'd made better choices." "I'm happy with my choices," I lied. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Are you? Really? When's the last time you bought something that wasn't on sale? When's the last time you didn't have to check your bank account before ordering dinner? I didn't answer. We both knew she was right. Victoria leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. You'll never afford this lifestyle, Adeline. Never. You're going to spend your entire life struggling while I continue to rise. And maybe that would be fine if you'd just accept it. But you walk around with this martyred artist acting like your poverty is somehow noble. I should go, I said, my throat tight. You just got here, Victoria replied, but there was no warmth in the invitation. Stay, have some free food and drinks. God knows you could use it. I turned and walked away before the tears could start falling. I made it to the hotel lobby before I had to stop, pressing my back against a marble column and taking deep, shaky breaths. The worst part wasn't that Victoria was cruel. The worst part was that she was right. I was barely surviving, and my dreams of building a successful design business felt more impossible with each passing day. I was about to head for the exit when I heard a commotion near the hotel entrance. A group of people were gathered around someone, their voices raised in concern. I moved closer, curiosity overriding my desire to escape. A man in an expensive charcoal suit was sitting on one of the lobby couches, his face pale and sweating. He was probably in his mid-50s, distinguished-looking with silver-streaked dark hair and sharp features. Hotel staff were hovering nearby, unsure what to do. I'm fine, the man was saying, waving them away. Just got a bit dizzy. Low blood sugar, that's all. Sir? We should call a doctor, one of the hotel managers insisted. I said I'm fine, the man repeated, more firmly this time. I noticed his briefcase had fallen on the floor, its contents scattered across the marble. Without thinking, I knelt down and started gathering the papers, organizing them carefully. There were contracts, presentation boards, and what looked like mock-ups for a major advertising campaign. Thank you, the man said, watching me sort his documents with a careful eye. You're very efficient. I work with a lot of paper files in my line of work, I said, handing him the stack. Everything should be in order now. He took the papers, then really looked at me for the first time. His eyes were sharp, assessing. You're not a guest at the gala, are you? Well, you are, but you're not part of the Bennett crowd. What gave it away? I asked with a small smile. You actually helped instead of pulling out your phone to post about it on social media, he said dryly. I'm Marcus Hartley. My stomach dropped. Marcus Hartley, founder and CEO of Bennett & Associates, Victoria's boss. Adeline Walker, I managed to say, shaking his extended hand. Walker, he repeated, his brow furrowing. Any relation to Victoria Walker Brennan? Of course he would know her. She probably talked about herself in every meeting. She's my sister, I admitted. Marcus's expression shifted, something unreadable crossing his face. Interesting. You're nothing like her. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I asked before I could stop myself. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. In this case, definitely good. Tell me, Adeline Walker, what do you do? I'm a graphic designer, freelance. Are you any good? The question caught me off guard. Most people asked about my clients or my rates or where I studied. Nobody ever just asked if I was good. Yes, I said, surprised by the confidence in my own voice. I'm very good. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. My office, Monday morning, 9 a.m. Bring your portfolio. I took the card, my hands trembling slightly. What for? I have a project that might interest you, he said, standing up slowly. The color had returned to his face. Or maybe you'll have a project that interests me. Either way, I think we should talk. He walked away before I could respond, disappearing back into the ballroom where the gala was in full swing. I stood there in the lobby, staring at the elegant business card in my hand, my sister's cruel words still echoing in my mind. You'll never afford this lifestyle. I looked down at my vintage dress, my worn shoes, my second-hand clutch. Then I looked at Marcus Hartley's business card. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe I could never afford her lifestyle. But as I walked out of the Grand Belmont Hotel into the cool Philadelphia night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. That weekend felt like the longest 48 hours of my life. I spent Saturday and Sunday organizing my portfolio, second-guessing every piece I'd selected, then reorganizing it all over again. My hands shook every time I looked at Marcus Hartley's business card sitting on my desk. Sunday night, I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios in my head. What if this was just a pity job? What if he'd forgotten about our conversation? What if Victoria had already poisoned him against me? Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain. I put on the only professional outfit I owned, a navy blazer I'd bought for interviews 2 years ago, paired with black slacks and a white blouse. In the mirror, I looked nervous but presentable. It would have to be enough. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. The Bennett & Associates building rose 32 stories above downtown Philadelphia, all gleaming glass and steel. I'd seen it before, of course. Victoria had sent me photos when she first got hired, making sure I understood exactly how impressive her workplace was. The lobby was even more intimidating than I'd imagined. Everything was marble and chrome, with modern art installations that probably cost more than my annual income. Well-dressed professionals moved through the space with purpose while I stood frozen near the entrance, clutching my portfolio case like a shield. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's voice was polite but cool, her eyes taking in my off-the-rack blazer with barely concealed judgment. "I have a 9 o'clock appointment with Marcus Hartley," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Your name?" "Adeline Walker." She typed something into her computer, her expression shifting from skeptical to surprised. "Of course, Ms. Walker. Mr. Hartley is expecting you. Take the executive elevator to the 28th floor. His assistant will meet you there." The elevator ride felt eternal. My reflection stared back at me from the polished metal walls, and I noticed the small coffee stain on my sleeve that I'd tried to hide with my portfolio case. Perfect. Just perfect. The 28th floor was quieter than I expected. Thick carpets muffled sound, and the walls were lined with awards and framed campaigns from Bennett & Associates' most successful projects. A woman in her 40s with kind eyes and auburn hair approached me with a warm smile. "Adeline, I'm Patricia Chen, Mr. Hartley's executive assistant. He's finishing up a call, but he'll be ready for you in just a moment. Can I get you some coffee or water?" "Water would be great, thank you," I said, grateful that someone here was actually being nice to me. Patricia led me to a seating area outside Marcus's office. Through the glass walls, I could see him on the phone, gesturing emphatically. He looked different than he had on Friday night. More energetic, more commanding. This was Marcus Hartley in his element. "He talks about you, you know," Patricia said, handing me a bottle of sparkling water. "Your sister," my stomach sank. "Nothing good, I imagine." Patricia's expression remained carefully neutral. "Let's just say Marcus values authenticity. He's not easily impressed by ambition alone." Before I could process what that meant, Marcus's office door opened. "Adeline, come in," he called out, his voice carrying that same assessing tone from Friday night. His office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Philadelphia. But what caught my attention were the walls. They were covered with designs, mock-ups, and creative campaigns in various stages of development. "Show me what you've got," Marcus said, settling into the chair behind his desk. I opened my portfolio with trembling hands, laying out my best work across his conference table. Logos for small businesses, a complete branding package for a local coffee shop, website designs, social media campaigns I'd created for clients who could barely afford to pay me. Marcus moved around the table slowly, studying each piece with intense focus. He didn't say anything for what felt like an eternity, just examined my work with those sharp, calculating eyes. Finally, he picked up a branding concept I'd created for a bakery in Fishtown. "This is good. Really good. The color psychology is perfect. The typography is clean but memorable." Why is a bakery your client instead of a Fortune 500 company? Because Fortune 500 companies don't return my emails, I said honestly. He laughed, a genuine bark of amusement. Fair enough. Here's the situation, Adeline. Bennett and Associates has been operating the same way for 20 years. We've been successful, don't get me wrong, but the industry is changing. Clients want fresh perspectives, authentic voices, designs that connect with real people instead of focus groups. He gestured to my portfolio. This is what it really looks like. Your work has heart. It tells stories. It's not trying to impress other marketers. It's trying to reach actual human beings. Thank you, I managed to say. My throat tight. I'm not finished, Marcus continued, leaning against his desk. 3 months ago, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that I've had to rethink my priorities. I've spent 2 decades building this company, and I realized I have no succession plan. No one I trust to carry forward the vision without turning Bennett and Associates into just another soulless corporate machine. He paused, his eyes fixed on mine. I've been looking for the right person. Someone with talent, vision, and hunger. Someone who understands what it means to fight for every opportunity because nothing was handed to them. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. I want to offer you a partnership, Adeline. Not an entry-level position, not an internship. A real partnership. You'll oversee our creative division, work directly with our biggest clients, and have equity in the company. In 5 years, if things go according to plan, you could buy me out completely and run Bennett and Associates yourself. I stared at him, convinced I'd misheard. I don't understand. You just met me. You don't know anything about me. I know you helped a stranger in a hotel lobby when everyone else was too busy posting on Instagram, Marcus said. I know your work is exceptional, even though you've had none of the advantages or connections that most designers in this industry have. I know your sister has spent 3 years trying to climb the corporate ladder here through politics and manipulation, while you've been building something real. He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to me. This is the contract. Take it home, read it, have a lawyer look at it if you want. The salary is in there, along with the equity package and benefits. I need an answer by Friday. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The number at the top of the first page made my vision blur. $250,000. Plus benefits. Plus equity. This is insane, I whispered. This is business, Marcus corrected. I'm betting on you, Adeline. The question is whether you're ready to bet on yourself. I looked up at him. This man I'd only met twice, who was offering me everything I'd ever dreamed of and more. Why me, really? Marcus was quiet for a moment, then walked to the window looking out over the city. 25 years ago, I was you. Talented, broke, and convinced I'd never get a real chance because I didn't have the right last name or the right connections. Someone took a risk on me. Changed my entire life. I've been looking for someone worth taking that risk on ever since. He turned back to face me. Your sister is good at her job. She's efficient, organized, and ruthless when she needs to be. But she'll never be great because she doesn't create. She copies. She doesn't innovate, she imitates. You, on the other hand, see things differently. That's what this company needs. I left Marcus's office in a daze, clutching the contract folder like it might disappear if I loosened my grip. Patricia smiled at me as I passed her desk, and something in her expression told me she knew exactly what had just happened. The elevator doors were closing when I heard a familiar voice call out, "Hold the elevator!" A perfectly manicured hand caught the door, and Victoria stepped inside. She was on her phone, not even looking at me as she continued her conversation. Yes, I'll have those reports on your desk by the end of day. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chen. She ended the call and finally noticed me standing in the corner. Her eyes widened slightly. Adeline? What are you doing here? I held up the folder, unable to keep the smile off my face. Meeting with Marcus Hartley. Victoria's expression shifted from surprise to suspicion. Marcus? Why would Marcus meet with you? He offered me a job, I said simply. What kind of job? Her voice had taken on that sharp edge I knew so well. The elevator dinged, announcing we'd reached the lobby. I stepped out, turning back to look at my sister. I'll let him tell you about it. Have a good day, Victoria. I walked out of the Bennett and Associates building into the rain, and for the first time in years, I didn't care that I was getting wet. I didn't care that I was probably going to ruin my only professional blazer. Because in my hands, I held a contract that could change everything. The question was, did I have the courage to sign it? I sat in my apartment that night, the contract spread across my coffee table like a hand of cards I didn't know how to play. The rain had finally stopped, but water still dripped from my windowsill, creating a steady rhythm that matched my racing thoughts. $250,000. Partnership. Equity in one of the most successful marketing firms on the East Coast. It was everything I'd ever wanted, gift-wrapped and handed to me by a man I'd only met twice. It felt too good to be true. And in my experience, things that felt too good to be true usually were. I picked up my phone and stared at my contact list. I needed advice, but who could I call? My parents had retired to Arizona 3 years ago and barely understood what I did for a living. My college roommate, Jennifer, had moved to Seattle and we'd lost touch. Victoria was obviously out of the question. My finger hovered over a name I hadn't called in almost a year. Daniel Reeves, my former professor from design school. He'd always been straight with me, never sugarcoating the harsh realities of the creative industry. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. Adeline Walker. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about me. Hi, Professor Reeves. I'm sorry I haven't kept in touch. Daniel, he corrected, like he always did. You graduated 6 years ago. You can use my first name. What's going on? You sound stressed. I explained everything. The gala, meeting Marcus, the contract, the impossible offer. Daniel listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I'd always appreciated about him. When I finished, there was a long pause. Read me the equity clause, he said finally. I found the section and read it aloud. Upon completion of a 90-day probationary period, Ms. Walker will receive 15% equity in Bennett and Associates, with an option to purchase an additional 35% over the following 5 years at a predetermined price of— Stop, Daniel interrupted. Adeline, do you understand what this means? This isn't just a job offer. Marcus Hartley is making you his successor. 15% equity immediately makes you the second largest shareholder after him. I know, I said quietly. That's what scares me. Good. You should be scared. You should be terrified. But tell me something, do you think you can do this job? I thought about my portfolio, about the campaigns I'd created with nothing but talent and determination. Yes. Then here's my advice. Sign the contract. But more importantly, hire a lawyer first thing tomorrow to review it. A real lawyer, not some discount legal service. This is too important to mess up. I can't afford a lawyer, Daniel. He laughed. Adeline, you're about to make $250,000 a year. Take out a loan, put it on a credit card, do whatever you have to do. Protect yourself. This Marcus guy might be genuine, but you need to make sure there aren't any landmines buried in that contract. We talked for another 20 minutes before I hung up. Daniel was right. I needed professional help with this. But first, I needed to make sure I could even afford that help. Tuesday morning, I called every lawyer in Philadelphia whose name I could find online. Most wouldn't even talk to me once they heard I needed a loan for their services. Finally, I found a small firm in West Philly run by a woman named Grace Okonkwo. She agreed to review the contract for $1,500, payable in installments. I met her that afternoon in her cramped office above a dry cleaner. Grace was in her 30s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Bennett and Associates, she said, flipping through the contract pages. My cousin works there. Says it's cutthroat but fair. She read in silence for 15 minutes, occasionally making notes in the margins. Finally, she looked up at me. This contract is airtight and surprisingly generous. The equity structure is legitimate, the non-compete clause is reasonable, and there's even a buyout protection that prevents other shareholders from forcing you out. Whoever drafted this wants you to succeed, so I should sign it? Grace leaned back in her chair. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this is the best offer I've seen in my 10 years of practice. If you don't sign this, someone else will, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. That night, I sat at my coffee table with a pen in my hand. The contract was in front of me, all 47 pages of legal language and life-changing promises. My hand trembled as I flipped to the signature page. I thought about Victoria's words at the gala. "You'll never afford this lifestyle." I thought about the eviction notice crumpled in my trash can. I thought about every ramen dinner, every declined credit card, every opportunity I'd missed because I didn't have the right connections. I signed my name. Wednesday morning, I scanned and emailed the signed contract to Patricia Chen. Within an hour, she called me back. "Welcome to Bennett & Associates, partner," she said warmly. "Mr. Hartley would like you to start Monday. That gives you the rest of this week to handle any personal business. We'll have your office ready, and I've scheduled meetings with the creative team for your first day." "My office," I repeated, still processing the word partner. 27th floor, corner office with a city view, Mr. Hartley insisted. "Oh, and Adeline? Congratulations. He doesn't do this lightly." I spent the next 3 days in a surreal haze. I paid my landlord 3 months of rent in advance using the signing bonus Marcus had included in the contract. I bought 3 new professional outfits that actually fit properly. I got my hair cut at a real salon instead of the cheap place in my neighborhood. But mostly, I prepared myself mentally for what was coming. Because I knew that once I walked into Bennett & Associates on Monday morning, everything would change. And Victoria would find out that her struggling little sister was now her business partner. Sunday night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Marcus. Patricia probably told you about the team meetings on Monday, but there's one more thing. I'm announcing your partnership at the 9 a.m. staff meeting. Everyone will be there, including department heads. I wanted you to know in advance so you're prepared." My stomach dropped. Everyone would be there, including Victoria. I texted back, "Does Victoria know?" His response came immediately. "She will on Monday. See you at 9. I barely slept that night. I kept imagining Victoria's face when Marcus made the announcement. Part of me felt guilty, like I was somehow betraying her. But a larger part of me remembered every cruel word, every dismissive comment, every time she'd made me feel small and worthless. This wasn't revenge. This was an opportunity, and I'd be damned if I let guilt stop me from taking it. Monday morning arrived with bright sunshine, as if the universe was mocking my anxiety. I put on my best new outfit, a charcoal gray suit with a crimson blouse that made me feel powerful. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The receptionist greeted me by name this time, her smile genuine. "Good morning, Ms. Walker. Mr. Hartley asked me to send you directly to the conference room at 30, the 30th floor. The executive floor, where the company made its biggest decisions. The conference room was already filled with people when I arrived. Department heads, senior directors, team leaders, all the people who made Bennett & Associates run. And there, sitting near the front with her tablet in perfect posture, was Victoria. She hadn't seen me yet. She was talking to someone next to her, probably complaining about something trivial. I watched her for a moment, this woman who'd spent years making me feel inadequate, and I felt something unexpected, not anger. Not triumph, just calm. Marcus entered the room, commanding immediate attention. Patricia followed him, carrying a stack of folders. Marcus's eyes found mine across the room, and he gave me a small nod. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, his voice filling the space. "Thank you for being here. I know Monday morning meetings aren't anyone's favorite, but this one is important. I have an announcement that will affect the future direction of this company." Victoria's attention sharpened. She loved announcements, loved being close to power and information. As many of you know, Bennett & Associates has been operating with the same leadership structure for 2 decades. That changes today. I'm pleased to introduce our newest partner and creative director, someone whose vision and talent will help us reach the next level. Marcus gestured toward me. "Please welcome Adeline Walker." The room erupted in polite applause. And in that moment, I watched my sister's face transform from professional interest to complete, utter shock. Her eyes locked on mine. And I saw it all there. Disbelief, confusion, anger, and something else I'd never seen before. Fear. The applause continued as I made my way to the front of the conference room, every eye in the room tracking my movement. Except Victoria's. She sat frozen, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to reality. Marcus shook my hand firmly, then turned back to address the room. Adeline brings a fresh perspective and exceptional talent to Bennett & Associates. She'll be overseeing all creative development and working directly with me on strategic initiatives. I expect everyone to give her the same respect and cooperation you've given me. He gestured to the empty chair beside him, the chair that had been vacant since his former business partner retired 5 years ago. I sat down, feeling the weight of 40 pairs of eyes assessing, judging, wondering how this unknown woman had suddenly appeared in a position of power. I know this is unexpected, Marcus continued, but I didn't build this company by playing it safe. Adeline's appointment is effective immediately. Patricia will send out an updated org chart by end of day. Now let's discuss Q4 projections. The meeting shifted to business matters, but I could barely focus. Victoria hadn't moved, hadn't blinked, hadn't done anything but stare at the wall behind Marcus's head. Her colleague, a man in his 40s with thinning hair, leaned over to whisper something to her, but she didn't respond. When the meeting finally ended 90 minutes later, people filed out in small clusters, whispering to each other. A few approached me with congratulations that ranged from genuine to obviously forced. I shook hands, smiled, and tried to remember names that immediately evaporated from my brain. Victoria was one of the last to leave. She gathered her things slowly, methodically, her movements mechanical. As she passed my chair, our eyes met for the briefest moment. Then she was gone, disappearing into the hallway without a word. That went well, Patricia said, appearing at my elbow. Better than expected, actually. Usually there's more pushback when Marcus makes major announcements. Victoria didn't say anything, I observed. Patricia's expression remained carefully neutral. Give her time. This is a lot to process. She handed me a folder. Your schedule for the week. Marcus wants you to meet with each department head individually. First up is Thomas Rodriguez from accounts at 10:30. My office was exactly what Patricia had promised. Corner location on the 27th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was bigger than my entire apartment. The furniture was modern and expensive, the walls bare and waiting for me to make them mine. I stood at the window, looking down at the streets below where people moved like ants, completely unaware that my entire life had just shifted on its axis. 24 hours ago, I was worried about eviction. Now I had a corner office and more money than I'd ever imagined earning. A knock on my open door made me turn. Thomas Rodriguez entered with a warm smile, carrying a tablet and a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Account Manager. Adeline. Congratulations on the partnership." "I'm Tommy." He extended his hand. "I run the accounts team, which basically means I'm the person clients yell at when they don't like something." I liked him immediately. "Nice to meet you, Tommy. Though I have to warn you, I have no idea what I'm doing." He laughed. Nobody does when they start. Marcus has a gift for throwing people into the deep end and seeing if they swim. The fact that he made you a partner means he thinks you'll swim just fine. We spent an hour discussing his team, current client projects, and the challenges he faced. Tommy was straightforward and honest, painting a realistic picture of the company's strengths and weaknesses. By the time he left, I felt slightly less terrified. The rest of the morning followed the same pattern. Department heads cycling through my office, each bringing their own agenda and concerns. Some were genuinely welcoming. Others were clearly skeptical, waiting to see if I was legitimate or just Marcus's latest pet project. Victoria's name came up more than once. "She's very territorial," one director warned me. "Doesn't like change, doesn't like competition. Watch your back with that one." I didn't mention that Victoria was my sister. Let them figure it out on their own. Lunch came and went. Patricia brought me a salad from the executive dining room, explaining that partners didn't usually eat in the main cafeteria. It felt strange and isolating, but I was too overwhelmed to argue. At 3 o'clock, my door burst open without warning. Victoria stood there, her face flushed and her eyes blazing with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her before I could respond. "Now," I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Have a seat. I'll stand." Victoria crossed her arms. "How long have you been planning this?" "Planning what?" "Don't play dumb, Adeline. How long have you been working on getting Marcus to give you this job? How long have you been plotting behind my back?" I felt anger rise in my chest but forced myself to stay calm. I met Marcus for the first time last Friday at the gala. He offered me the partnership on Monday. I signed the contract Wednesday. There was no plotting, Victoria. There was no grand scheme. Liar. Her voice was venomous. People don't just become partners at Bennett & Associates. I've been here for 3 years, working my way up, proving myself every single day. And you show up in your thrift store dress and somehow convince Marcus to hand you everything I've been working for? Maybe he saw something in me that has nothing to do with you, I said quietly. Victoria laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the large office. Please, you're a freelance designer who can barely pay rent. You have no experience with corporate clients, no understanding of how this industry works, no connections, and yet here I am, I interrupted, standing up. Marcus didn't choose me because of my resume, Victoria. He chose me because of my work, because I create things that matter instead of copying what's already been done, because I understand that good design is about connecting with people, not impressing other marketers. This is insane, Victoria said, shaking her head. Marcus has lost his mind. There's no way you're qualified for this position. Then I guess I'll have to prove myself, won't I? Victoria's expression shifted, something calculated replacing the raw anger. You realize what you've done, don't you? You've made an enemy of everyone in this building who's been working for years to earn what you just got handed to you. They're going to be watching every move you make, waiting for you to fail. Let them watch, I said, meeting her eyes. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've been doing it my whole life while you've been playing office politics. Office politics is how this world works, little sister. And you just entered a game you don't know how to play. Victoria moved toward the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. Oh, and one more thing. Don't think being Marcus's favorite is going to protect you forever. He's been grooming his next successor. Everyone knows it. The question is whether it's going to be you or someone actually qualified. She left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. I sank into my chair, my hands shaking. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving behind exhaustion and doubt. Victoria's words echoed in my mind. Was she right? Was I in over my head? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. How's your first day going? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, challenging but good. His response came immediately. That means you're doing it right. Come by my office at 5. I want to discuss your first major project. I looked around my corner office, at the expensive furniture and the city view, and the nameplate that now read, Adeline Walker, Partner. This was real. This was happening. And Victoria could be as angry as she wanted, but I wasn't going anywhere. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email notification. The subject line read, Updated Organization Chart. I opened it and scrolled down to the creative division. My name sat at the top, directly under Marcus. And there, 3 levels below me, was Victoria Walker Brennan, Senior Marketing Director. For the first time since the staff meeting, I smiled. Not because I wanted to lord my position over my sister, but because I finally understood something important. This wasn't about Victoria. This never had been. This was about me finally getting the chance I deserved, and I'd be damned if I let family drama or office politics stand in my way. I had work to do. At 5 o'clock sharp, I knocked on Marcus's office door. He waved me in without looking up from the 3 computer monitors arranged on his desk. Close the door, he said, still typing. And grab a seat. I settled into one of the leather chairs across from his desk and waited. Marcus finished whatever he was working on, then swiveled to face me fully. "Victoria came to see you," he said. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Because I've worked with your sister for 3 years and I know exactly how she operates. When something threatens her carefully constructed world, she attacks." He leaned back in his chair. "What did she say?" I hesitated, unsure how much to share. "She thinks I manipulated you, that I'm not qualified for this position. And what do you think?" The question caught me off guard. I think I have a lot to learn. But I also think you wouldn't have offered me this partnership if you didn't believe I could do the job." Marcus smiled. "Good answer. Now let me tell you why I really brought you here." He pulled up something on his center monitor and turned it to face me. "Garrison Automotive. They're one of our biggest clients, $70 million in annual billing. They've been with us for 8 years and they're bored." The screen showed a series of car advertisements, all following the same formula: sleek vehicle on an empty road, dramatic music, tagline about power or freedom or innovation. "Every campaign looks the same," I observed. "Exactly. Garrison's CEO, Richard Pemberton, called me last week and said if we don't bring him something fresh by the end of the month, they're taking their business to our competitors. This is your first project, Adeline." "Save this account." My stomach dropped. "You're giving me a $70 million client for my first assignment?" "I'm giving you the chance to prove Victoria wrong," Marcus corrected. "You have 3 weeks. Tommy Rodriguez will handle the account management side. I want you to focus entirely on creativity. Show me what you can do when the stakes are real." I left Marcus's office with a USB drive containing 8 years of Garrison campaigns and a deadline that made my palms sweat. 3 weeks to save a $70 million account. No pressure. The next morning, I assembled my team. Tommy had assigned me 3 junior designers, a copywriter, and a strategist. They filed into the conference room looking curious and slightly terrified. "I know what you're all thinking," I said, standing at the head of the table. "Who is this woman, and why is Marcus letting her near his biggest client?" Fair question. The truth is I don't have corporate experience. I've spent the last 6 years designing logos for pizza shops and building websites for local businesses. The team exchanged glances. One of the designers, a young woman with purple-streaked hair named Maya Chen, raised her hand tentatively. "So why did Marcus make you a partner?" "Because I'm good at telling stories that matter," I said simply. "And that's what we're going to do for Garrison." I've looked at 8 years of their campaigns, and they're all the same. Beautiful cars, empty roads, meaningless taglines. We're going to give them something real. I pulled up my first slide. Garrison makes affordable, reliable vehicles for working families. But their advertising targets luxury buyers who want status symbols. We're missing their actual customer base entirely. The strategist, an older man named David Park, leaned forward. "Their demographic research says—" "I don't care what their demographic research says," I interrupted. "I care about who actually buys their cars. Tommy, pull the sales data by model and region." Tommy worked his tablet for a moment. "The top-selling model is the Garrison Family Cruiser. Midwest and South are the strongest markets. Average buyer age is 38. Household income $65,000. Single parents," I said. "Coaches shuttling kids to soccer practice. Nurses driving to night shifts. Small business owners loading up equipment. Those are Garrison's real customers and we've been ignoring them." Maya's eyes lit up. "So we create campaigns that show real people using these cars for real life?" "Exactly. Not aspirational luxury. Achievable reliability," David frowned. "Garrison's previous creative director tried something similar 4 years ago. The client hated it, said it made their brand look cheap. Then we'll make sure it doesn't look cheap," I said. "We'll make it look honest." There's a difference. We spent the next week living in that conference room. Maya turned out to be brilliant with visual storytelling, while the copywriter, James Sullivan, had a gift for writing dialogue that sounded like actual humans talking. David provided the strategic framework that kept our creative ideas grounded in business reality, but Victoria was watching. I felt it every time I passed her in the hallway. Saw it in the way her assistant suddenly went quiet when I entered the break room. She was waiting for me to fail and probably doing everything she could to make sure I did. On Thursday of week 2, I discovered just how far she'd go. I was reviewing mock-ups with the team when Tommy burst into the conference room, his face red. "We have a problem," Richard Pemberton just called. "Someone from Bennett and Associates contacted him yesterday to express concerns about the new creative direction." My blood went cold. "What kind of concerns?" "That you're too inexperienced to handle an account this size. That Marcus is making a mistake. That Garrison should request a different creative lead before it's too late." Everyone in the room turned to look at me. Maya spoke first. "Who would do that?" But I already knew. "Did Pemberton say who called him?" Tommy shook his head. "He wouldn't give me a name. But he wants a meeting. Tomorrow at 2. He wants to see what we've got, and he wants Marcus there." I spent that evening perfecting our presentation until my eyes burned from staring at screens. Every slide had to be perfect. Every word had to land. Because if I failed this meeting, I wouldn't just lose the account. I'd prove Victoria right. Friday afternoon arrived too quickly. Richard Pemberton was exactly what I expected. Late 50s, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that tried to crush your fingers. He brought 2 executives with him, both looking skeptical. Marcus made introductions, then turned the floor over to me. I took a breath and began. For 8 years, Garrison Automotive has been trying to convince luxury buyers that their cars are aspirational. But the truth is, your cars are something better. They're dependable. They're affordable. They're the vehicle that gets people to the job that pays the mortgage, to the hospital when their kid has a fever at midnight, to the life they're actually living. I clicked on the first concept. This is Sarah Martinez, single mom, nurse, works double time to pay for her daughter's college. Her Garrison family cruiser has 200,000 miles on it, and it's never let her down. The image showed a real woman in scrubs, smiling tiredly as she loaded her work bag into a well-used but clean car. The tagline read, "Garrison, built for the life you live." Pemberton leaned forward. I continued through 6 more concepts, each featuring real people in real situations. A construction worker whose Garrison truck carried his livelihood. A teacher who drove 45 minutes each way because she couldn't afford to live closer to her school. A young couple with their first baby, choosing safety over style. When I finished, the room was silent. Pemberton studied the final slide for a long moment, then turned to Marcus. "This is different," he said slowly. "Different good or different bad?" Marcus asked. Pemberton smiled. "Different, honestly. I like it. But I have one question." He looked directly at me. "Someone from this company called me to say you weren't qualified to handle our account. They said you'd probably deliver something generic and safe." They were wrong. "Who was it?" I glanced at Marcus, then back to Pemberton. "I think that's an internal matter we'll handle privately." "Fair enough." Pemberton stood and extended his hand. "I want to move forward with this campaign. Start with a regional test, let's say the Midwest for 3 months. If the numbers support it, we'll go national." After they left, Marcus turned to me with an expression I couldn't read. "You knew it was Victoria?" "She's my sister," I said quietly. "I know how she thinks." "And you protected her anyway." "I protected the company. If Pemberton knew a senior director was sabotaging projects, it would damage Bennett and Associates' reputation. This way, we keep the client and handle family drama internally." Marcus studied me for a long moment. "You're going to do just fine here, Adeline." As I walked back to my office, I saw Victoria standing near the elevators. Our eyes met across the hallway. She looked away first. I'd won this round. But something told me the war was just beginning. 3 months passed faster than I thought possible. The Garrison campaign launched in the Midwest with results that exceeded everyone's expectations. Sales increased by 32% in the test markets, and social media engagement went through the roof. Real customers were sharing photos of their own Garrison vehicles with the hashtag #BuildForLife, creating organic content worth millions in advertising value. Marcus called it the most successful regional launch in company history. Richard Pemberton called it a game changer and greenlit the national rollout with an increased budget. The industry publications called it innovative, and Victoria called in sick the day the numbers were announced. My phone buzzed during the celebration in the main conference room. It was a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations on Garrison. You earned it." "Grace Okonkwo," I smiled. The lawyer who'd reviewed my contract had been following my career. It felt good to know someone outside this building believed in me. "Speech," Tommy called out, raising his champagne glass. The rest of the creative team joined in, chanting until I had no choice but to stand. "I'm not good at speeches," I began, which earned some laughs. "But I want to say thank you. Maya, James, David, you brought this campaign to life. Tommy, you kept the client happy when I was too focused on creativity to remember that client relationships matter. And Marcus," I found him standing near the windows, watching with an unreadable expression. "Thank you for taking a chance on someone who had no business being here." "You had every business being here," Marcus said firmly. And this is just the beginning. The party continued, but I slipped away after another hour. Success was intoxicating, but I had other projects demanding attention. 3 new clients had requested me specifically after seeing the Garrison campaign, and I was determined to prove that my first success wasn't a fluke. I was working in my office at 7 that evening when Patricia knocked softly. "Still here? You know partners are allowed to go home occasionally." "I'm still getting used to being a partner," I admitted. "Feels like if I stop working, someone's going to realize they made a mistake." Patricia sat in the chair across from my desk, something she never did without being invited. "Adeline, can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Of course." Victoria requested a transfer to the New York office last week. Marcus denied it. I set down my pen slowly. "Why would she want a transfer?" "Because working here, reporting to someone 3 levels above her who happens to be her little sister, is killing her ego." Patricia's expression was kind but honest. "She's going to keep trying to undermine you." The Pemberton call was just the beginning. "I know," I said quietly. "Do you?" "Because I've worked here for 12 years, and I've seen people like Victoria destroy careers through whisper campaigns and strategic sabotage. She's smart, she's connected, and she's desperate to prove you don't belong." "What do you think I should do?" Patricia stood, smoothing her skirt. "Document everything. Every success, every client interaction, every project milestone. Build an undeniable record of your value so that when, not if, Victoria makes her next move, you have ammunition." She paused at the door. "And Adeline? Be careful who you trust. Not everyone who smiles at you wants you to succeed." That night, I lay awake in my new apartment, a 1-bedroom in a good neighborhood that I'd been able to afford thanks to my partnership salary, thinking about Patricia's warning. I'd been so focused on proving myself with clients that I hadn't considered the political battlefield I'd walked into. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find an email from Marcus marked urgent. "Conference room A, 8 a.m., mandatory attendance." I wasn't the only one confused. The conference room filled with worried faces, everyone speculating about what could require an emergency meeting. Victoria arrived last, her expression carefully neutral, as she took a seat near the back. Marcus entered with 2 people I didn't recognize, a woman in her 40s wearing a severe black suit and a man in his 60s with the bearing of someone who'd spent his life in boardrooms. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Marcus began. "I want to introduce Diane Foster and Robert Chen from Meridian Capital Group. They've been conducting a comprehensive evaluation of Bennett and Associates over the past 6 weeks." My stomach dropped. Meridian Capital Group was a venture capital firm known for buying marketing agencies and either growing them exponentially or gutting them for parts. "After careful consideration," Marcus continued, his voice steady, "I've agreed to sell 40% of Bennett and Associates to Meridian. This will provide the capital we need to expand nationally while maintaining our creative independence." The room erupted in whispers. Victoria's hand shot up. "What does this mean for current leadership?" Diane Foster fielded the question. Existing leadership remains in place. However, Meridian will be installing new systems for accountability and performance tracking. Each division will need to justify its budget and demonstrate clear ROI. We'll be conducting individual evaluations with all senior staff over the next month. After the meeting, panic rippled through the building. People clustered in hallways, speculating about layoffs and restructuring. I retreated to my office, trying to process what this meant for my position. A knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Victoria, and for once she didn't look angry. She looked worried. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "If you're here to gloat, I'm not." Victoria sat down without invitation. Meridian is known for cutting creative departments first. They think creatives are expensive. They prefer data-driven marketing, automated systems, and A/B testing instead of original campaigns. So your entire division is at risk, Adeline. And if they cut you, Marcus loses his majority stake. The partnership agreement you signed gives you 15% equity. If you're forced out, that equity reverts to the company, which means Meridian can buy it. I studied my sister's face, looking for the trap. "Why are you telling me this?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Because despite everything, you're still my sister. And because if Meridian takes over completely, we all lose our jobs." She stood to leave, then paused. "The evaluation meetings start next week. They're going to ask you to justify every expense, every campaign decision, every hire. Be ready." After she left, I sat in silence for a long moment. Then I opened my laptop and started building the most comprehensive portfolio of my work that I could possibly create. Patricia was right. I needed documentation. But now it wasn't just about office politics. It was about survival. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Diane Foster and her team of analysts moved through Bennett and Associates like auditors preparing for a trial. They interviewed department heads, reviewed budgets, and examined every project from the past 3 years. The creative team grew increasingly nervous as rumors spread about which divisions were profitable and which were on the chopping block. My evaluation was scheduled for Monday at 9 a.m. I spent the entire weekend preparing, running through potential questions, gathering data on every campaign I'd touched since joining the company. The Garrison success was my strongest card, but I needed more. Sunday evening, I got a call from Maya. "Adeline, I'm scared. My roommate works at an agency that Meridian acquired last year. They cut the entire creative department and replaced everyone with freelancers." "That's not going to happen here," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "How do you know?" I didn't. But I couldn't let my team fall apart before the evaluation. "Because we're going to prove that creativity isn't overhead. It's the entire point. Get some sleep, Maya. We have work to do tomorrow." Monday morning arrived with cold rain. I wore my best suit, a charcoal gray designer piece I'd bought after my first paycheck, and carried a leather portfolio case that contained 3 months of success stories, client testimonials, and financial projections. The evaluation room was stark and corporate, designed to intimidate. Diane Foster sat at the head of the table with 2 analysts flanking her. Marcus was notably absent. "Ms. Walker, thank you for meeting with us." Diane's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Let's get started. You've been a partner here for 3 months. In that time, you've overseen 1 major campaign, Garrison Automotive. Tell me why you're worth keeping." I met her eyes steadily. "I'm worth keeping because I understand something fundamental that data analysts often miss. People don't buy products. They buy stories. They buy meaning. They buy the feeling that a purchase validates who they are or who they want to become." I opened my portfolio. The Garrison campaign succeeded because we stopped selling cars and started selling reliability. We gave our customers permission to choose practicality over status, and they loved us for it. That campaign generated a 32% sales increase in test markets and 47 million impressions on social media, most of it organic. Diane glanced at her analysts. "Impressive numbers for 1 campaign. What else?" I spent the next hour walking them through every project, every client interaction, every decision that had contributed to the creative division's performance. When I finished, Diane leaned back in her chair. You're clearly talented, Ms. Walker. But talent doesn't always translate to leadership. How do you handle conflict on your team? It was a loaded question, and we both knew it. I believe in addressing issues directly and honestly. I don't play politics, and I don't waste time on grudges. My focus is on results. And when results require difficult decisions, firing someone who isn't performing, then I make the difficult decision. But I also believe in developing talent before replacing it. Diane closed her folder. Thank you for your time, Ms. Walker. We'll be in touch. I left the room shaking, unsure if I'd saved my position or sealed my fate. And as I walked past Victoria's office, I saw her watching through her glass walls, her expression unreadable. The game had changed. And I still didn't know all the rules. The evaluation results came out on Friday afternoon. Patricia delivered them personally, which told me everything I needed to know before I even opened the envelope. Marcus wants to see you immediately, she said, her face gravely. My hands trembled as I walked to his office. Through the glass walls, I could see Diane Foster and Robert Chen already seated. This was it. Either I'd survived or I was about to be shown the door after just 3 months as a partner. Marcus gestured for me to sit. Adeline Meridian has completed their evaluation of all departments. Diane took over, her voice clipped and professional. Your creative division is the most expensive department in the company per employee. You have 12 staff members costing an average of $93,000 annually, plus benefits and resources. My stomach sank. However, Diane continued, and I caught the slight smile at the corner of her mouth. Your division also generates the highest ROI of any department. For every dollar spent on creative, Bennett and Associates sees $4.7 in revenue. The industry average is 2.1. I blinked, not quite believing what I was hearing. Robert Chen leaned forward. Ms. Walker, we came here expecting to gut the creative department and replace it with freelancers and automation. But your numbers don't lie. The Garrison campaign alone has generated $17 million in new business. 3 other clients have increased their contracts specifically to work with your team. You've created more value in 3 months than most creative directors create in 3 years. What are you saying? I asked carefully. Marcus smiled, actually smiled. They're saying that not only is your division safe, but Meridian wants to expand it. They're proposing we open creative offices in New York and Los Angeles, both under your leadership. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I don't understand. I thought you wanted to cut costs. We did, Diane admitted. But good business means recognizing when an investment is paying off. Your team isn't overhead, Ms. Walker. You're the competitive advantage. Meridian is prepared to allocate an additional $12 million to creative expansion over the next 2 years, contingent on you leading the initiative. After they left, Marcus poured 2 glasses of whiskey from the bar in his office. You saved yourself, Adeline. And you saved the soul of this company. I had help, I said, thinking of my team working late nights, of Patricia's warnings, even of Victoria's unexpected heads-up about Meridian's reputation. Speaking of help, Marcus said, Victoria submitted her resignation this morning. The whiskey glass froze halfway to my lips. What? She's taking a position with Foster and Klein in Boston, Senior Vice President of Marketing. It's a good opportunity for her. Bigger title, better salary, and about 300 miles away from you. I didn't know how to feel. Relief? Guilt? Victory? Did you try to keep her? Marcus shook his head. She didn't want to be kept. Victoria's good at her job, but she was never going to be happy here. Not after you became your partner. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them go. That evening, I found Victoria packing up her office. Boxes were stacked on her desk, and the walls that had once been covered with awards and achievements were bare. I heard about Boston, I said from the doorway. Victoria didn't look up. Came to gloat? No, I came to say goodbye. She finally met my eyes, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than anger there. Maybe acceptance, maybe exhaustion. You won, Adeline. You got everything I wanted. I didn't do this to compete with you, I said quietly. I was just trying to survive. Victoria laughed bitterly. And you did. You survived so well that you became my boss. Do you have any idea what that felt like? Watching my little sister, the one who could barely pay rent, walk into the office as a partner? Having to report to you on the org chart? Then why did you warn me about Meridian? She was quiet for a long moment, carefully wrapping a framed certificate in bubble wrap. Because you're still my sister. And because despite everything, you earned your place here. I can hate that and still respect it. I stepped into the office. Victoria, you're talented. You're brilliant at account management and client relations. Foster & Klein is lucky to have you. But they're not Bennett & Associates, she said softly. They're not the company where I spent 3 years building my reputation. She closed the box with sharp, angry movements. You want to know what really kills me? It's not that you got the partnership. It's that you deserved it. I watched you with the Garrison team, saw how you inspired them, how you took a dying account and turned it into the company's biggest success story. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. What? That I've been playing politics instead of doing real work. Schmoozing clients instead of creating value. Climbing the ladder instead of actually contributing something meaningful. She picked up another box. Boston is my chance to start over. To prove I can succeed without standing in anyone's shadow. Not even yours. I helped her carry boxes to her car, and for the first time in years, we worked together without tension. As she loaded the last box into her trunk, she turned to me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the gala, for calling Pemberton, for every time I made you feel like you weren't good enough. I forgive you, I said, and meant it. Victoria nodded, blinking back tears she'd never allow to fall. Make them remember my name, Adeline. Show them that the Walker sisters don't fail. She drove away into the Philadelphia evening, and I stood in the parking garage watching her taillights disappear. It felt like the end of something and the beginning of something else entirely. 6 months later, I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in the new Los Angeles office of Bennett & Associates, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. The expansion had been everything Marcus promised. Challenging, exhausting, and incredibly rewarding. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. We'd been messaging occasionally, tentatively rebuilding something that resembled a relationship. Saw the LA Times article about the new office. Congratulations, partner. You're making us Walker sisters look good. I smiled and typed back. Boston treating you well? Made VP of Strategic Development last month. Foster & Klein doesn't know what hit them. That's my sister. That's our legacy. I pocketed my phone and turned back to survey the office. The creative team was working late again, their energy infectious as they brainstormed campaigns for clients who now specifically requested Bennett & Associates because of our reputation for authentic, meaningful work. Maya had been promoted to senior designer. Tommy was now overseeing the entire West Coast account management team. And Marcus had started talking about retirement, hinting that in a few years I might be ready to buy him out completely and become majority owner. The girl in the thrift store dress seemed like a lifetime ago. The struggling designer who couldn't afford dinner seemed like a different person entirely. But as I looked at my reflection in the glass, I realized she was still there. Still hungry, still determined, still refusing to let anyone tell her what she couldn't achieve. My desk phone rang. It was Patricia calling from Philadelphia. Adeline, we just got a call from Delaney Industries. They want to fly you to New York next week to pitch for their global rebranding. It's a $200 million account. Tell them I'll be there, I said, already mentally assembling the team I'd need. As I hung up, I thought about that night at the gala when Victoria had told me I'd never afford this lifestyle. She was wrong. I hadn't just afforded it. I'd built something better. Not a lifestyle based on status and appearances, but a career based on talent, hard work, and the courage to bet on myself when no one else would. The city lights began to sparkle below as Los Angeles settled into evening. Somewhere in Boston, Victoria was probably still at her desk, proving herself in a new city. Somewhere in Philadelphia, Marcus was planning his next move, mentoring the next generation of talent. And here I was, Adeline Walker, partner and creative director of one of the fastest-growing marketing firms in the country, standing in an office with my name on the door and my future entirely in my own hands. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't beating someone else. It was becoming the person you were always meant to be, regardless of who tried to stop you. I grabbed my bag and headed out. My team was waiting, and we had work to do. After all, success doesn't sleep, and neither do the people hungry enough to earn it. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.